This is Mike for Photo Concerto, and today I've got Merv Pinny with me all the way in New Zealand. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks, Mike. Here, awesome.
So you have re-released a single from back in 1994. Is that correct?
It is, yeah, it is. It's a, it was actually a award-winning song, but it never actually got released on digital. So,
Ah,
um, and that was why it happened that way. So it was quite a quite a process. But we've sort of remastered the track and then put it out on digital, so that we could reach overseas, because really it only went internally here within New Zealand. But the year of 1995, I think it was, it won rock single of the year, and got nominated in the Best Album Awards. So it's sort of a long time, with that song, but it's still relevant. It still works, so it's great.
well, I think this is going to surprise you. I found that it was released over there on a compilation disc called Kiwi Hit Disc number 9, which was a promo that only went to radio stations.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, they used to have a thing where they picked songs out and called it Kiwi Hit Discs and sent it out to all the radio stations. I was lucky enough to have 3 songs make
That
the
I was going to
make
say
the
I saw you
Kiwi.
on 3 different ones.
Yeah, 3 different ones. Man, you did some real research finding that. Yeah, because I've actually found one of the discs the other day and thought,
Oh,
man, I'm
did
glad
you?
yeah, I actually still had it. I was cleaning out the storage and actually found this disc. So I was pretty happy about that.
I was going to
Um,
ask if when they did that, if you guys got copies of it too, or if it only
we
went to the radio stations.
no, we all got copies. They were like things that you were supposed to look after and put on the wall. And of course, mine because I wasn't thinking about it too much, I probably lost mine. But I think if I looked hard enough, I'll be able to find the others. But,
Okay, and the
yeah, so
song.
that was. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
was going to say the song is called Destiny. Now, what I was trying to figure out, was there an actual album that went with this too?
There is, yeah. Now I
Same
haven't.
name, right?
Same name, yeah. So yeah, Destiny, and that got nominated for Best Album, I think in 94, 95. Um, it was a great album because everything was performed live, and we actually recorded everything onto 2-inch tape. And
Ah, back in the
at the,
tape days.
yeah, back in the tape days. But the funny thing was, it was probably one of the first albums that actually incorporated Pro Tools here in New Zealand,
Oh,
because Pro Tools was released that year in New Zealand.
okay.
And we spent hours recording this at Air Force Studios in Auckland. And me and the engineer, who were friends, were trying to work out what Pro Tools was all about, because we only understood tape. And then we we recorded this fantastic sax solo from this guy we have in New Zealand. He was off the charts that day, and we only to discover the next day we couldn't find it. So we sort of lost it and said to him, "Oh, well, we didn't really like that take, so we'll get you to play it again." So we had to go back and record it onto tape.
Would that have been Walker Bianco?
It was Walter, yeah. Walter,
So,
that's Walter. He's still involved in like jazz music and stuff. He's just a fantastic musician.
well, before
Um,
we talked, I went on Discogs and tried to see what I could find from you. This particular album, first of all, is not listed on there at all. The only place that I managed to find it, let's see here where I am at. It's the National Library of New Zealand, and apparently they have a copy of it, but it can't be checked out.
right. So there you go. Yeah, so it's that album, because we only printed, I think we like originally printed 2,000 copies, and was like we printed 500 disc copies, sorry, CD not CDs, cassettes. You know, it was like the last of cassettes, and they actually went, and now we can't find any of those, so they're completely gone. But the albums, I still have some of the albums, you know, but now, of course, it's been remastered. It'll be a new album cover, you know.
Right. And so I know in the press release, you'd listed it as a country single, which it does have countries like the sound that was popular with country music during the 90s, I guess, because of course it's evolved over time. So most Americans, when we hear country music, we think it's very isolated to the US. So I'm kind of curious, how big is or was country music in New Zealand?
It was not very big in New Zealand, country music, and I was with a record company called Edge Warner, and Edge Warner really wanted to push me into the country music, if you like, so that they could promote it overseas. And what actually happened was, I turned around and actually that song actually won rock single of the year, and I was actually so it got all a bit weird and a bit country. And then of course here in New Zealand the album's actually quite groovy, if you like, you know, and it's right. Sort of, you know, if you've heard any of my stuff that I do today, it's like rock that grooves. It's got a bit of soul-y stuff in it, and of course the country artists got a little bit up, and you know, because they are actually over here, the country music they're very traditional, old school. It's more like country and western, you know, and they weren't ready to accept my music as being country, though, and they would get on the radio and actually pick out the songs that had the most sort of R&B or type sound they could find and play that and say, this is what New Zealand music's calling country these days, you know. So it was a little bit of a standoff, and then of course winning that award threw the record company into a little bit of disarray. They weren't sure what to do after that. Yeah.
But I think around that time too, you know, because you're saying, you know, they're thinking it's not country, but that's around the time too here in the U.S. that, I guess shortly after when Garth Brooks started to get really popular, I think there were a lot of people here that were like, well, no, that's not traditional, that's not country at all.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that same thing happened here. And the record company, to be fair, were probably right on the mark at the time, you know. And it's just how people responded to it, you know.
Right.
And then sort of going up for the best album awards, I was actually after someone that was very traditional, you know. So it was a little bit like that, but it was great to be, you know, to be nominated for that award as well, you know. So I would class it as maybe country rock, you know, is what I would say, yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of what I consider most country music today. Is it's more country rock. It's not the traditional country I'm used to hearing that I grew up with, like with my grandparents that they listened to, like Johnny Cash and all that.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And, you know, if you listen to, the artists today, it's, you know, they have got riffs and they have got the guitars wound up, and it has got a bit of punch to it and a bit of kick to it, you know, and of course, you know, I can get away with that now and say, well, that's country, my type of country rock, you know.
Right. And so I found an interview, which actually made me laugh a little bit because in the interview I heard you were a dairy farmer.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, yeah.
What I thought was funny though is the woman, and I don't know if you remember this, the woman had said something about that, and she had said that you were a dairy farmer before you were a musician, and your answer I thought was classic because you said, "Well, I've always been a musician."
Yeah. Well, that's true because I started off when I was you know, like 10 years old, so I was playing in the family band from 10, you know, with my two brothers, you know. So for me it had always been music, you know, and farming. I just had to do farming so I could make a living, you know. And you know, my parent, my father was pretty, like, that's not a real job, being a musician. It wasn't until I actually won some awards he was like, oh, actually maybe there's something in this.
So then I assume you're not doing the dairy farming anymore.
No, I don't do it, but I do sort of miss that sort of outdoorsy stuff, and I used to really love horses, and we used to have horses on the farm, so I had a bit of a connection with horses. I just think they're great animals, so I miss that side of it, and the people and everything. And when I first arrived at the city, coming from the country, because I was from like a small town, I'd never really been to a big city. Almost, I was like a fish out of water there for a while. I just didn't know what to do. Didn't understand the whole concept of it. And it was just too much going on. But I did love it. Like, it didn't take me long to adjust. It was like, you go to town, and there's heaps of shops. It's not just a few shops. Yeah, we're sort of used to parking outside the shop we want to go to, so.
And so it looks like really when you kind of got popular or known in the US was a few years ago. Looks like there was a single that made it pretty big on some of the indie stations here.
Yeah, I was really lucky. It was on the back of like a Facebook post I did about a song, and quite a lot of that actually happened by accident, if you like. I just screwed it up because I didn't know much about Facebook, and it was sort of like a whole raft of mistakes that I made that actually worked for some reason, and I ended up, getting a lot of followers off the back of that, and that video was fairly, extreme at the time. It was, had a pretty strong message, but the song, had punch as well, and Americans loved it because it just had that, that sort of raw feel about it, So I was really thankful for that, and pretty much that's continued. It's been great that because a lot of Kiwi artists really struggle to get anybody to like their music in the States, but for me, it's just sort of almost happened naturally, which is good.
Well, I think that's one of the things that the internet has changed a lot for musicians, is that no matter where you're at, someone outside of that region somehow is going to stumble on the music if you put it out there.
Yeah, and that's something that didn't used to happen. You would have had to have a record company and a publicist and all the stuff that goes with it, to get your message across, and I found it really easy when I had the record company there to get these things going, Unfortunately for me, the time that I was signed with the record companies, I'd also bought a motorbike and decided that I love speeding, which didn't go down too well when I'd actually crashed it in the middle of releasing stuff, and ended up in hospital. So they weren't very happy with me at all, but it was something that was probably, in some ways I thought it was good, because as an artist I feel like you need to develop and be true to what you want to do, and I felt like I was getting sort of pushed in a direction that maybe wasn't quite suiting me, as well. Right. So and when you come back to it and you have a bit more experience, you're a bit more truthful about what you're doing musically, so I think that's very important, because if you're not, people will soon discover that fairly quickly. Yeah.
Right. Well, and back in '94 when you released the first album, I think for anyone outside New Zealand to have discovered it, and I don't know how big it was in New Zealand, but there always would have been tape trading.
What's that, tape?
So here in the US, there was a big underground movement with people that was tape trading. So someone would get a tape and they'd like it and they're like, oh, this is really good. So they would make a copy and they give it to their friends. And pretty soon,
Yeah.
somewhere across the coast, you've got like a 10th generation copy of, whatever someone else had.
I don't know. According to the record company, because for me to be able to release the song, I had to get clearance from the record company as a remaster, But as far as they were concerned, it never actually went outside of New Zealand. I found that the new material that I've made has appeared on lots of because I have a Google search going all the time, just for stuff about being an artist, and I've found my songs being sold on lots of different platforms that are nothing to do with me. So people have make it's a little bit what you're saying, but it'd be a place like India where they've got a whole website going and they actually had photos that I didn't even have of myself, and they had them on this website saying it was me, and they're selling my records and that. And so that is still going on, but just in a digital way now. And the distributor that does my music in New Zealand said, oh, what do you want to do about it? And I said, well, we had a bit of a talk about it. And I said, well, at least my music's getting out there. Is it? Because they said it's too hard to stop them. We just don't even know where they are. So just let it
I've
go.
heard that.
And I thought, oh, well, if they're playing my music, great, they can just have it,
Yeah, I've seen the same thing. I'm a photographer, outside of doing interviews, and I don't think any of my stuff's out there, but I have seen photographers talk about I was on eBay or whatever, and I saw these items for sale, and it's my photo.
Yeah. Well, I run into an artist that was living in America, and they came back from America, and they were actually lived down the road from me, and we'd actually gone to this party, and he was telling me about when he went to a training thing over there for music. They were actually using one of my songs as an example in their lesson. And he said, oh, I know that guy. He lives, and of course nobody believed him that he lived there. He was like, that guy's from my town, and it was quite funny. He said, but he said in the end, he said he almost had to give up because they didn't actually believe he was telling the truth, So it was quite funny, but I felt sorry for him for that. But it was quite interesting though. And I said, I didn't even have any idea that was happening. Yeah. So
Nobody licensed it apparently.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, no, there's probably no license on it. No. But with the new stuff though, everything's got a digital code on it, so it's
right.
It's a lot more trackable, yeah. But someone wants to grab an MP3 off YouTube, nothing you can do about it, really. Yeah.
Right. So after this re-release, do you have any new stuff?
Yes, I have. I've got another album coming out probably early this year. That's ready to go, and I'm just sort of doing the final preparation. I'm sort of waiting for COVID to finish on the 23rd of March. So that's
is that a definitive date when it's finishing, please?
That's a definitive date, the 23rd of March. Yeah. So I've started that rumor around town, and it's like people have been coming up. Oh, COVID's over soon.
Which is funny because I think that's around the same date that I told a friend of mine that we'd have another variant, because here in the U.S. it's right around when vacation time starts for the kids.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty adamant that it's going to end on the 23rd of March. So you can put that in your diary, and if it's not right, I can burn my records. Yeah. I said, someone asked me, how do you know that? And I said, well, it's sort of like it's God against science here. That's how I know. So I said, it's high authority. Yeah. But certainly been a hard time for for musicians over this period, you know, like trying to
Definitely.
Yeah, but saying that, very creative too. There's been a very creative time, so there's lots of new music on its way because people have been locked up, you know.
Yeah, well, I've seen lots of bands that instead of doing a full album, they're singles here and there, like every like couple months. Or there's one band I saw that I swear every 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, there was another single. I'm like, didn't we just get one? Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's actually a thing. I think Spotify. I got an email from Spotify saying that I wasn't releasing my music quick enough. That they wanted to get a, they wanted one every 6 weeks. So
Oh, jeez.
yeah, I was thinking, oh, well, okay, that's going to be difficult. But so I've been trying to stick to that in the last couple of months, you know, to sort of pick things up and do what they say. Really, yeah. So hopefully I can keep to that this year.
Okay. Any plans of touring outside New Zealand? Or I imagine logistically that's a little tricky.
It is a little tricky, and what I did here in New Zealand was I left the band behind, and I actually just picked up the acoustic guitar and some gear and did a solo tour. And it's the first time that I'd actually done a solo tour, you know, and it was fantastic. I loved it. You know, it's so great when because all the audiences here, we were under restrictions here, so all the audience was sitting down, which was something unusual for me as well. And I've actually found it really good. I loved it. You know, like I could talk to the audience and almost they could talk back to me. You know, so it was a great feeling. And then we did like 4 shows, and then we went into a different level of lockdown, and we weren't allowed to have any shows. So unfortunately, it got short. But would love to come to the US and do some work there. That'd be fantastic. You've got some fantastic musicians in the States, you know.
Well, we got a lot of festivals that happen here too that you could always, even if it was a one-off.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. Would love to, to actually put the name out there and try and get into some of those festivals, you know, because I think that's where I really like performing live. You know, that's one of my favorite things to do.
Well, and I don't know how well it would work in. We've got a blues festival that has some traditional blues, but then some heavier stuff too that happens around the summer here.
Oh yeah, okay. What's the dates on those? I'd love to get into that.
Actually, it's whatever the first weekend is going to be around the 4th of July.
Okay, 4th of July. Okay, well
that's let's take a look here. Actually, so that would be probably the weekend. They're probably going to run it either June 30th through. Actually, I'm thinking they're going to run it the 1st, so Friday the 1st through either Monday the 4th or Tuesday the 5th.
Tuesday the 5th, that'd be perfect, yeah. Because that's virtually our winter over here.
Oh, that's true.
Not that it gets that cold where I live. You know, it probably gets down to like 14 degrees. You know, so we don't get any real cold here, but like in north part of New Zealand, but still rainy. You know.
Right.
So yeah. And what's the blues festival called? What's that? What's the one you have here?
Actually, I believe it's just the Portland Blues Festival.
Portland's Blues Festival.
Yeah, I believe so. Hang on one second. Yeah, it is just the Portland Blues Festival.
Oh, that'd be perfect. Yeah, I'd love to come and see that.
Sorry, Waterfront Blues Festival. I was close. It is July 2nd through the 5th.
Okay, Waterfront Blues Festival. I'm going to try and get hold of it. Do you have got good contacts there, maybe?
You know what? Let me talk with the editor for one of the local websites that I work with because he knows them because every year we've got photo passes.
Ah, fantastic. Well, it sounds like it'd be a fun time anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they have a lineup yet. They usually don't start announcing that for until a couple of months out. But in fact, the Blues Festival was the first place. So my daughter has been doing some concert photography with me, and the first place she ever did any photography was at the Blues Festival.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. So how long have you been doing the photography in that?
About 10 years, but I've inadvertently taken the last 2 years off.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
well, I suppose you not much choice if you're doing live shows and concerts.
Exactly. Well, I don't know what they said over there. Over here, it was going to be 2 weeks to curb the spread. Well, it's now been almost 2 years.
Yeah. It's been a tough time, isn't it? Like, and we've sort of almost dodged a bullet here in New Zealand. We've sort of haven't had a lot of COVID compared to the rest of the world, I suppose. It's probably because we're smaller and we're a bit more isolated. Sort of on an island, I suppose it's harder for it to get in.
Well, I've heard it's been kind of the opposite over with your neighbors in Australia.
It is, yeah. Australia's had a really, really rough run, and they probably come out of their sort of restrictions a little bit too early, and we had a bit of a scare over here where that new Omicron thing come through with the DJ from the UK. He sort of left the isolation early, and he actually had it, and he actually went off to and visited every restaurant and nightclub in Auckland, but but nobody actually got it, so it was pretty amazing. I was like, oh, maybe it's around, maybe it's not, I don't know, but I thought that's going to ruin my 23rd of March prediction.
Well, I'm still going to hope that your prediction is right.
I think everybody is. Yeah. I think.
Or you know what? Maybe it'll just be the 23rd there, and every place else will still have it.
No, I think it'll be like that. I think probably if everyone is kind to each other, and then it'll happen. That's probably the thing we need to do. Everybody's got to be nice to each other.
Sometimes that's asking a lot. Have you been on Twitter?
Oh, I know. Yeah. That's what it takes, though, I think. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been good talking to you. I can't think of any other questions today, but let's talk again after the new album comes out.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, because there's a bit of different stuff on there, and I'm not scared to mix it up a bit, and try different things, because it's certainly been good to, try the more groovier stuff. I've noticed that I've got more, because I had a pretty male-dominated audience, but now it's probably I've probably got 40% female because of the different, different songs that have come up in the last few months.
Well, it could be too, though, because I can tell you, as someone who listens and goes to a lot of metal shows, it used to be, the audience was very male-dominated, and there's been some shows I've gone to that about half of it is women.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. No, well, I think, but what I'm seeing on the figures, so it's, but we're lucky we've got all this information now. It's just, there's just too much information almost. You can tell, where people are listening to it and where you should go, and it all seems too easy. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been good talking to you.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show, and I wish everybody all the best, and all your listeners all the best here, and just remind them that 23rd of March, that's the end of it all. We can all relax and just go back to our normal lives.
All right. We're all going to look forward to that.
Oh, yeah. Well, have a good night, eh? Thank you.
All right, you too. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.